Amanda's voice cut through the Christmas morning laughter like a blade. "You're such a useless old woman." I pushed back my chair and stood, looking her straight in the eye. "Then maybe stop calling me whenever you need money," I said evenly. What happened next would have me calling 911 only minutes later. But let me back up and explain how what started as a festive holiday morning became the day everything changed for me. My name is Margaret Foster, though everyone calls me Maggie. At 67, I thought I'd seen every possible kind of family drama, but I was about to learn I hadn't. The day had begun beautifully. My son Brian had invited me over for Christmas, something that didn't happen often in recent years. Amanda, his wife, usually preferred small gatherings, which usually meant leaving me out, but this year she'd been unusually eager for me to join them. Looking back, that should have been a warning sign. I arrived right on time at 10 o'clock, as requested, with my well-known apple crisp in one hand and a bag full of carefully chosen presents for my grandkids, 16-year-old Jake and 14-year-old Emma. The house smelled of pine and cinnamon, soft Christmas music playing in the background. "Grandma Maggie!" Emma squealed, rushing into my arms with a hug that warmed my heart. Jake, trying to act cool, still managed a shy smile and carried my gifts inside. Amanda greeted me with a picture-perfect smile that now feels rehearsed. "Margaret, so glad you could come. The kids have been talking about you all morning." Brian hugged me warmly, and for a few hours it really did feel like Christmas. Gifts were opened, the kids showed off their new clothes and games, and I joined Amanda in the kitchen to help prepare the meal. That's when things began to shift. "Margaret," Amanda said, pulling the turkey from the oven, "could you bring the desserts from the counter?" I turned to look. Pumpkin pie, chocolate cake, a store-bought apple tart, but my apple crisp was nowhere in sight. "Where's my crisp?" I asked. Amanda's expression flickered. "Oh, that? I put it away in the pantry. We've got so much food already, and Brian said store-bought desserts are easier to clean up after." Her casual tone carried a sharp edge. I forced a calm voice. "I've been making that crisp for 30 years. It's Jake's favorite." Amanda shrugged. "Tastes change." I should have stayed quiet. I should have let it slide, but something about her dismissiveness cut deeper than I expected. "Amanda," I said firmly, "I spent 3 hours making that dessert yesterday. The least you can do is serve it." Her demeanor snapped. 3 hours? For a dessert no one wanted? "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Margaret. You just assume you're welcome to insert yourself. Assume we want your contributions. Assume we need you here at all." The kitchen went dead silent except for something bubbling on the stove. From the living room, I could still hear Brian and the kids laughing, completely unaware of the tension brewing 10 feet away. "I brought dessert because that's what family does," I said softly. "I've been bringing dessert to family dinners longer than you've even been here." Amanda's eyes hardened. "Longer than I've been here? Is that supposed to mean something? Let me tell you what I know about family. Family doesn't show up and rearrange our fridge. Family doesn't nitpick how we raise our kids. And family doesn't expect to be treated like royalty just because they're old." Each word felt like a slap. I'd never done any of those things. Haven't you? Amanda stepped closer, lowering her voice to a sharp whisper that sliced deeper than if she'd yelled. "The fridge incident? That was last month when you helped put away groceries and reorganized everything because you decided we were storing things wrong. And the parenting comment? 2 weeks ago when you hinted Jake needed more structure. Should I keep going?" Her words hit me like a cold splash of water. In that moment, I realized every small gesture, every attempt to help, had been quietly recorded and turned into ammunition for this very confrontation. "I was only trying to help," I murmured. "No," she snapped, her tone icy. "You were trying to control, like you always do. Just like when Brian was a kid, and now you're doing the same with my children. The constant advice, the thoughtful gifts that always come with strings, the way you act like you know better about everything." The accusation about gifts stung most of all because it was so far from the truth. What strings, Amanda? Every gift I've given was out of love. Let's talk about the money, Margaret, she interrupted, her voice cutting through mine like a blade. The loans to Brian you never expect him to repay. The cash you slip him when you think I'm not watching. Do you honestly believe that doesn't come with strings? That we don't feel pressured to include you? That we don't tolerate your interference because of your generosity? It felt like a punch to the gut. I give Brian money because I love him, because I want to help, I said softly. You do it because it makes you feel important, she shot back. It gives you leverage over us, over our decisions, our lives. And when we don't play along fast enough, you guilt-trip us about how much you've done for this family. Isn't that true? That's not fair, I whispered. But Amanda wasn't finished. How many times have you reminded us you paid for Jake's braces, or that you sent Emma to summer camp, or that you covered the mortgage when Brian was between jobs last year? You keep a running total in your head, don't you? I opened my mouth to protest, but no words came. Because while I'd never intended my help to be manipulative, I couldn't deny the sting I felt whenever my sacrifices went unnoticed. Amanda read my silence like a book. See? I knew it. You do keep track, and you use it. The dinner that followed felt like a scene from a play where everyone knew their lines except me. Amanda had composed herself perfectly, sliding back into her role as the gracious hostess, but every time her eyes flicked toward me, I could feel the tension simmering beneath her smile. Brian chatted about work, blissfully unaware of the kitchen battle that had just taken place. The kids chattered about school, friends, and their new gifts, their laughter filling the space where I sat quietly, forcing myself to eat Amanda's flawless meal. Grandma, aren't you going to have some apple crisp? Emma asked sweetly when Amanda brought out the dessert tray. Before I could answer, Amanda's smooth voice cut in. Grandma didn't bring apple crisp this year, honey, but look at this beautiful chocolate cake, your favorite. Her lie was so seamless, so convincing, I almost questioned myself. But Jake, sharp as ever, wasn't buying it. I saw it in the pantry, he said innocently. The one with the crumbly top Grandma always makes. Amanda's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. Oh, that? Just leftovers from earlier in the week. Nothing special. Can we have some anyway? Jake pressed, already half rising from his seat. Sit down, Jake. Amanda's voice was suddenly sharp, commanding. The kids froze. I said we're eating what's on the table. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Brian cleared his throat nervously. Everything okay, honey? Amanda's laugh was brittle, too bright. Of course, just keeping things organized. You know how chaotic Christmas can get. But Jake wasn't ready to let it go. But Jake wasn't ready to back down either. With the quiet determination only a 16-year-old can summon when they sense something isn't fair, he turned to me. Grandma, did you make your apple crisp this year? The one with the oats on top? I met his gaze, then looked at Amanda. Her face was perfectly composed, but the warning in her eyes was unmistakable. This was a test. I could either play along with her version of the story, letting her control the narrative, or I could tell the truth and risk setting off a bigger storm. Yes, Jake, I said softly. I made it yesterday. Then why can't we— Because, Amanda cut in sharply, her voice rising even as she tried to keep it steady. Sometimes adults make decisions about what's appropriate for a special occasion. And sometimes, she added, locking eyes with me, people need to realize that not every tradition deserves to be kept, just because it's old. The insult was subtle enough that Brian didn't notice, but it hit me like a slap. Not every tradition deserves to be kept because it's old. She wasn't just talking about dessert anymore. I see, I murmured. Good. Amanda sliced herself a large piece of chocolate cake. I'm glad we understand each other. But we didn't. Not even close. Because what I was finally starting to understand was that Amanda had been quietly pushing me out of this family for a long time. This fight over dessert was just the latest skirmish in a war I hadn't realized was being waged. I thought back over the last year, how many family events I'd been accidentally left out of, always with excuses about keeping things small. How many times Brian had mentioned celebrations after the fact, apologizing that I hadn't been invited. How often I'd been told the kids were too busy to visit, even though I'd seen their smiling faces at gatherings with other relatives all over social media. It wasn't about Apple Crisp. It wasn't even about Christmas Day. It was about Amanda's slow, deliberate effort to erase me from their lives, all while keeping my financial support in her back pocket for whenever it was convenient. After dinner, I offered to help clean up, hoping for a moment alone with Brian, but Amanda had orchestrated the evening like a general. Brian was sent out to the garage with Jake for some father-son project. Emma was ushered upstairs to sort through her new gifts. And I was left in the kitchen, alone with Amanda. Exactly how she'd planned it. "I suppose you're proud of yourself," she said coldly, scraping plates with unnecessary force. "I'm not sure what you mean." "That little scene at dinner, making me look bad in front of the kids. Real mature, Margaret." I set the serving dish I was holding down at the sink, forcing myself to stay calm. "Amanda, I need to understand what's going on. I feel like I'm missing something important here." She spun to face me, her polite mask gone entirely. "What you're missing," she said, her voice low and icy, "is that this is my family, my home, my children. And I'm done pretending your constant presence and interference are welcome. Brian is my husband. Those kids are mine. This is my house. I decide who's part of our family celebrations and who isn't." The possessiveness in her voice was unsettling, as if Brian and the children were property rather than people with relationships of their own. "You can't just erase me from their lives because you feel threatened," I said, my voice trembling slightly. Amanda laughed, the sound hollow and mocking. "Threatened by you? Margaret, please, look at yourself. You're 67, living alone in that tiny apartment. The only reason anyone even pays attention to you is because you write checks. Do you honestly think I feel threatened by that?" Every word was chosen to cut deep, and each one landed with precision. But a spark of defiance lit inside me, pushing back against the cruelty of her assessment. "If that's how you really see me," I said slowly, "then why do you keep accepting my money?" For the first time since our conversation began, Amanda's mask slipped. She looked genuinely uneasy. "That's different," she muttered. "How is it different?" I asked, my voice steady. "Family helps family. You said that yourself, but apparently I'm only family when you need something from me." Amanda's shoulders tensed as she turned back to the sink, scrubbing a plate that was already spotless. "You don't understand the pressure we're under," she said sharply. "Brian's job is demanding. The mortgage is crushing. The kids need so much. When you offer to help, we accept because we have to, but that doesn't mean we enjoy having you hovering over every choice we make." Her honesty was like a slap, but at least it was the truth. For years, I'd convinced myself that my financial support came from love and was received with gratitude. Now I understood. My money was tolerated, not appreciated, and my presence was nothing more than a burden Amanda endured to keep the checks coming. "So tell me, Amanda," I said, my voice calm. "What do you really want from me? Should I just keep sending money and stay away? Would that make you happy?" She hesitated, actually weighing the idea. That pause told me everything I needed to know. "I want," she said finally, "for you to stop pretending this is some perfect family. I want you to accept your role in our lives is limited. And I want you to stop making Brian feel guilty every time we don't include you in something." "I've never tried to make Brian feel guilty," I said firmly. "Haven't you?" she challenged. "What about last month, when you told him how lonely you felt on Emma's birthday? Or Thanksgiving, when we went to my sister's and you just happened to mention how quiet it was at your house? You might not realize you're doing it, but you are." I stood there, leaning against the counter, listening to her list my supposed offenses. But instead of anger or heartbreak, I felt something unexpected. Clarity. Like a switch had been flipped, and the room I'd been stumbling through in the dark was suddenly lit up. "You're right," I said softly. Amanda froze, startled by my agreement. "I am?" "Yes, you're absolutely right. I have been making assumptions about my place in this family. I assumed that because I love Brian and the kids, that love was mutual. I assumed my help was valued, not merely tolerated. I assumed I was wanted, rather than just useful." Her face tightened, wary now, as if she sensed she'd pushed too far. "But you know what, Amanda?" I added, my voice calm but firm. "You've given me the most meaningful Christmas gift I could have asked for. The truth. And now that I know exactly where I stand, I can make some changes." "What kind of changes?" she asked, her tone uneasy. I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that made her take a step back. "Well, let's start with the obvious. If I'm only part of this family because of my money, then we should treat this as a business arrangement. No more surprise gifts, no more emergency bailouts, no more unspoken expectations about what family owes each other." "That's not what Isn't it?" I interrupted gently. "You just admitted you take my help because you feel forced to, not because you want to. That my presence is the cost you pay for my generosity. So let's eliminate that cost. From now on, if you need money, you can ask for it. No more fake family gatherings, no more pretending we all enjoy each other's company. Just business." Amanda's complexion went pale. "You're being ridiculous. I never said—" "You said exactly that," I replied, my voice like steel. "You told me you're under pressure and that you accept my help because you have no choice. Well, now you do. You'll find another way to handle that pressure." Just then, footsteps echoed down the hallway, breaking the tension. Brian appeared in the doorway, Jake trailing behind him. "How are my favorite ladies doing?" Brian asked with a forced brightness, clearly picking up on the tension even if he didn't know why. "Just having a nice chat," Amanda said quickly, her voice sweet but tight. "Just talking about holiday traditions and changes." I glanced at my son, the boy I'd raised, loved, and supported for 42 years, and felt a pang I couldn't hide. When had he become so skilled at sidestepping uncomfortable truths? When had he started accepting Amanda's version of reality without question? When had my feelings stopped mattering to him? "Dad," Jake said suddenly, breaking the tension. "Mom won't let us have Grandma's apple crisp. It's in the pantry, but she says we can't eat it." Brian's brows furrowed. "Apple crisp? Mom, did you bring apple crisp?" "She did," Jake confirmed, refusing to let it drop. "But Mom said it wasn't appropriate for Christmas dinner." I watched Brian's expression shift as he tried to make sense of this, caught between his wife's authority and his confusion over why dessert, any dessert, would be unwelcome. "Well," he said finally, "maybe we can have it later. Like a midnight snack or something." It was a diplomatic answer, but it revealed everything I needed to know about this household. Amanda called the shots, and Brian quietly worked around her rules instead of challenging them. "Actually," I said, reaching for my purse, "I think I'll head home. It's been a long day, and I'm feeling a bit tired." The protests came immediately, exactly as expected. Brian insisted it was too early for me to leave. The kids begged me to stay and play games. Even Amanda offered a half-hearted invitation to have coffee and another slice of dessert. But I saw it, the flicker of relief in her eyes. This was exactly what she wanted, a quiet acknowledgement that things had changed. No, I said gently. I really should go." I hugged Jake and Emma tightly, holding on to them just a second longer than usual. "Thank you for a lovely Christmas dinner," I told Amanda, my voice even. Brian walked me to the door, carrying my coat and the untouched dish of apple crisp. "Mom," he said softly, "is everything okay? You seem different." I paused at the threshold, glancing back at the beautifully decorated house that no longer felt like home. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about some changes I might need to make in the new year." He frowned slightly. "What kind of changes?" "Oh, nothing dramatic," I said with a faint smile. "Just reassessing priorities." Brian seemed relieved, even if a little puzzled. To him, a 67-year-old woman talking about reassessing priorities probably sounded like harmless self-reflection, not the beginning of a complete restructuring of our relationship. "If you ever need anything, you know you can call me, right?" "Of course," I said. But we both knew those calls had become increasingly meaningless over the years, polite conversations filled with excuses to hang up quickly. I drove home slowly, taking the scenic route through neighborhoods glowing with Christmas lights and inflatable Santas swaying gently in the cold night air. Through windows, I glimpsed families laughing, exchanging gifts, eating meals together, and I couldn't help wondering how many of those cheerful scenes were just as fractured as the one I'd left behind. Back in my small apartment, I set my purse on the table and made myself a cup of tea. Then I sat down with a notepad and began writing. Not a shopping list or a list of resolutions, but an accounting. A detailed record of every loan I'd given Brian and Amanda over the past 5 years, every emergency payment, every time I'd covered their bills, every gift significant enough to strain my own budget. The number at the bottom of the page made my stomach twist. It was far more than I'd imagined, far more than I could afford to continue if I wanted any hope of security in my retirement years. But this wasn't about the money. Money could be replenished, budgets could be tightened. At my age, I didn't need much to live comfortably. No, this was about something much deeper. Dignity. Self-respect. The ability to look in the mirror and recognize the woman staring back at me. For too long, I'd been buying tolerance and calling it love. I'd been accepting scraps of attention and pretending it was closeness. I'd been enabling Amanda's control and telling myself I was keeping the peace. That illusion ended tonight. My phone rang just as I finished tallying the numbers. Brian's name flashed across the screen, and my stomach knotted instantly. I could already imagine Amanda hovering beside him, coaching him on exactly what to say, her way of damage control, making sure my feelings weren't hurt badly enough to disrupt the financial pipeline. I let the call go to voicemail. When it rang again immediately, and then a third time, I finally answered. "Mom, thank God," Brian said in a rush. "Listen, there's been a situation here. Amanda, she called the police." My blood ran cold. "What happened?" "She says you threatened her," he stammered. "Says you told her you were cutting off contact with the family and that she feels unsafe. The officers are here now and they want to talk to you." The room tilted. After everything that had happened tonight, after all the humiliations and her carefully crafted cruelty, Amanda had found a way to flip the narrative. She was playing the victim, and she'd dragged the police into it. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my living room, facing Officer Patricia Wells, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who radiated calm authority, like someone who'd seen every flavor of family drama there was. "Mrs. Foster," she began, flipping open a small notebook. "Your daughter-in-law claims you made statements about cutting off all contact with the family, and that your behavior today was erratic and concerning. Can you tell me your version of events?" I almost laughed. After years of Amanda's subtle manipulation, she'd finally overplayed her hand. One thing about being 67 with a spotless record, officers tend to listen when you speak calmly and clearly. "Officer Wells," I said evenly, "Amanda told me today that my role in their family is strictly financial. She said they put up with me because I help with their bills, not because they enjoy having me around. I told her I understood and that I'd adjust my expectations accordingly. She apparently decided that was a threat." Officer Wells jotted something down. "What kind of financial help are we talking about?" I reached for the notepad I'd been working on when Brian called. "Over the past 5 years," I said, handing it over, I've provided roughly $43,000. Loans, gifts, mortgage payments, car repairs, tuition, summer camps, you name it. Not once did I ask for repayment. Her brows lifted slightly. That's a significant amount, and you expected nothing in return? I'm a mother, I said simply. I did it out of love, or at least I thought I did. Tonight I learned I've been paying for the privilege of being treated like I don't belong. Officer Wells studied me for a moment, her expression thoughtful. Mrs. Foster, I have to ask directly. Did you make any statements that could reasonably be interpreted as a threat? I met her gaze. I told Amanda that if my place in this family is strictly transactional, then we should treat it that way. No more fake family gatherings where I'm barely tolerated. No more pretending we enjoy each other's company. If they need money, they can ask directly, but I'm done subsidizing people who resent me, that's it. She tapped her pen against the notebook. That doesn't sound threatening to me. It wouldn't to any reasonable person, I replied quietly. But Amanda isn't reasonable. She's been methodically pushing me out of my son's life while still keeping her hand in my wallet. Tonight, I finally called it what it is and told her I wouldn't enable it anymore. She panicked. Officer Wells closed her notebook. I don't see any evidence of threatening behavior here, Mrs. Foster. It sounds like a disagreement about boundaries and finances. I do have to file a report, but that's all. When she left, the apartment was silent again, but the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clarifying. For the first time in years, I wasn't heartbroken or desperate to smooth things over. I wasn't even confused. I was furious, calmly, sharply furious, in a way that sharpened everything inside me. Amanda had made a fatal mistake. By involving the police, she'd dragged this ugly dynamic out into the light, where it could be examined objectively. And under that scrutiny, her cruelty and manipulation were impossible to disguise. My phone buzzed. A text from Brian. Mom, I'm sorry about the police thing. Amanda was upset and overreacted. Can we talk tomorrow and sort this out? I stared at Brian's message for a long while. Even after everything that had happened, he was still softening Amanda's behavior, calling it overreacting, as if her call to the police had been an emotional slip, not a calculated move. He wanted to sort this out, as though I shared equal blame for the chaos she had created. I didn't bother replying. Instead, I opened my laptop. Something had been tugging at the edges of my mind all evening, a quiet unease I could no longer ignore. Amanda Mitchell, now Amanda Foster, had always been guarded about her life before Brian. I'd excused it as normal privacy, the kind a woman might keep about her past relationships or jobs. But as I sat there with the glow of the screen reflecting off my glasses, I realized I couldn't answer even the simplest questions about her. Where had she gone to school? What was her maiden name before Mitchell? Where had she worked before Brian met her? After 8 years of holidays, birthdays, and shared family events, I knew virtually nothing. All Brian had ever said was that he met her at a coffee shop in Denver, where she was the manager. That was it. So I started digging. I searched for coffee shops from 2015 that might have employed an Amanda Mitchell. No luck. The businesses had either closed, changed names, or their staff records weren't public. But when I widened my search to legal records, something finally appeared. 3 women named Amanda Mitchell in the Denver area had been involved in civil suits between 2010 and 2015. 2 of them were clearly not her, wrong ages, different details. But the third one, Amanda J. Mitchell, age 28 in 2014. She'd been accused of embezzlement. The case had been quietly settled out of court, records sealed, but the original complaint was still visible. According to the filing, she'd stolen client funds over an 8-month period, using her role as office manager to cover her tracks. The dates lined up perfectly. The settlement closed in early 2015. Brian met Amanda later that same year. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. Suddenly, so many things made sense. Her insistence on controlling their finances, her strangely detailed knowledge of my investments, and her relentless effort to distance me from family events while maintaining a steady flow of help from me. Amanda wasn't simply a strong-willed daughter-in-law. She was a woman with a shady financial past who had found the perfect setup, a trusting husband and a generous, wealthy mother-in-law too polite to question her motives. But suspicion wasn't enough. I needed proof. Hard proof. The next morning, I called my bank and requested copies of every check I'd written to Brian or Amanda in the last 5 years. Then I called my financial advisor, asking him to review my accounts for any large withdrawals, transfers, or payments I'd made on their behalf. The findings chilled me. My rough total of $43,000 was far from accurate. That was just the money I remembered clearly. What I'd forgotten were all the extras: gift cards for the kids, always sent through Amanda, emergency transfers to their household account, direct payments to contractors for home repairs and renovations. The true total? Over $67,000 in 5 years. And the timing of some of these emergencies didn't make sense. There were multiple months when Brian's salary should have easily covered their expenses, yet they still asked for help, unless their spending was wildly irresponsible or someone was quietly draining their finances. I thought about Amanda's designer handbags, her frequent spa days, her pricey yoga memberships she bragged about on social media. I kept thinking about how she always had cash for her hobbies while insisting they were strapped for basic bills. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I drove to Bryan Street and parked across from their house. Not to snoop exactly, just to observe, to see what I might notice now that my perspective on Amanda had shifted. It didn't take long. At 2:30, a truck pulled up. Not a standard parcel courier, but a furniture delivery from a high-end boutique downtown. 2 men unloaded a full dining set, table, chairs, and a sideboard that looked like it cost more than some cars. 30 minutes later, Amanda's SUV rolled into the driveway. She climbed out with arms full of glossy shopping bags, Nordstrom, Anthropologie, and a couple of other upscale labels. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late December, the day after Christmas, and she was clearly on a spree. I thought about yesterday's speech, the crushing mortgage, Brian's demanding job, the pressure that supposedly forced them to accept my help. And yet, less than 24 hours after playing the victim in front of the police, she was unloading what looked like thousands of dollars in furniture and clothes. My phone rang. Brian. This time I answered. "Mom, I'm glad you picked up. We need to talk about yesterday. Amanda's really upset. There were misunderstandings." "Brian, where are you right now?" "At work. Why?" "Just curious. Is Amanda home?" "Yeah, day off. Running errands, maybe some after-Christmas shopping. The kids are with friends." After Christmas shopping? With what money, I wondered? The money they didn't have because of all that pressure? "Brian, I need you to think carefully. How much do you believe I've given your family over the last 5 years?" A long pause. "I don't know, Mom. We never kept a total. You've been generous, but—" $67,000. Silence stretched so long I checked the screen to make sure we were still connected. That can't be right. I have bank records, canceled checks, transaction histories. $67,000 in loans, gifts, emergency transfers, and bills I paid. "Mom, even if that's accurate, you never made us feel obligated. Haven't I? According to Amanda, every dollar came with strings. She said you include me because you have to, not because you want to." Another heavy silence. "She said that?" "She said a lot. What worries me most is that she asked you to call me today, not because she regrets what she did, but because she's afraid the checks might stop." "That's not— Mom, you're making it sound more calculated than it is." "Am I?" "Tell me this. When was the last time Amanda suggested including me? Her idea, not yours?" He groped for an answer. "Well, yesterday's Christmas dinner was her idea." And how did that turn out? That evening, my phone rang again. The caller identified herself as Detective Sarah Reeves from the Denver Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. Mrs. Foster, I understand you've been looking into someone named Amanda Mitchell. Can you tell me why? My heart stuttered. Who is this really? Ma'am, I'm a detective with Denver PD. Your internet searches triggered some alerts in our system. Amanda Mitchell is a person of interest in an ongoing investigation, and we'd like to speak with you about your connection to her. The world seemed to tilt. She's my daughter-in-law, I said slowly. She goes by Amanda Foster now. She married my son. When was the marriage? 2016. They've been married about 8 years. Mrs. Foster, Detective Reeves continued, her voice calm but serious. Would you be willing to come to the station tomorrow morning? There are some things you need to know about Amanda Mitchell, and there are some things we need to know about your relationship with her. That night, I barely slept. Every memory of Amanda over the past 8 years ran through my head like a film reel, only now I saw it differently. Every cutting remark, every manipulation, every carefully constructed boundary between me and my son, it all felt calculated. Not just controlling, but criminally professional. At 9 o'clock sharp the next morning, I was sitting in Detective Sarah Reeves's office, staring at a thick folder with Amanda's photo clipped to the front. Mrs. Foster, she began, Amanda Mitchell has been operating under multiple identities for over a decade. The embezzlement case you found online was only the start. She's been married twice before under different names. In both cases, she drained her husband's finances and disappeared. I felt physically ill. What about my son? What about Jake and Emma? The children appear to be Brian's based on our investigation, Reeves assured me. But Amanda Foster, Mitchell, has been running a long con on your family. She's used your financial generosity to fund a lavish lifestyle, including a second apartment, a car registered under another name, and what looks like preparations to disappear again. Disappear? I echoed, my throat dry. Detective Reeves opened the folder and slid a series of photos toward me. Amanda at a bank I didn't recognize. Amanda with a man I'd never seen. Amanda unloading boxes into a storage unit. We believe she's been planning to leave your son for months. The pattern is always the same. She finds a financially stable partner, drains every possible asset, and then vanishes. In both previous marriages, she left the children behind. She abandoned them? I whispered. They weren't biologically hers, but yes, she has no issue walking away from kids she's raised if it suits her plan. My heart ached at the thought of Jake and Emma waking up one day to find their mother simply gone. But another thought cut through the pain. If you know all this, why hasn't she been arrested? We've been quietly building a case, Reeves explained. What we needed was recent, actionable evidence of fraud. Your research last night, combined with your records of the money she's taken, gives us exactly that. I straightened in my chair. What do you want me to do? Detective Reeves leaned forward, her eyes sharp. Mrs. Foster, we'd like your help catching her in the act. The plan was straightforward, but clever. I would approach Amanda with an irresistible offer, a large early inheritance framed as a tax strategy to benefit the family. The sum would be big enough to trigger her greed, but structured in a way that would require her to expose her hidden accounts and financial maneuvers. It took 3 days to set up. During that time, I had to play the part of the loving, oblivious mother-in-law, answering Brian's calls and pretending life was normal. The hardest part was keeping him in the dark. Detective Reeves had been firm. If Brian knew, he might unintentionally tip Amanda off, ruining everything. Friday morning, I finally dialed Amanda. Amanda, I'd like to talk to you about something important, I said smoothly. Could you meet me for coffee this afternoon? She sounded surprised, but agreed. We chose a neutral cafe downtown, one that gave Reeves and her team a perfect vantage point. As I sat across from Amanda, I summoned every ounce of composure I had. Amanda, I began gently, I've been thinking about our conversation on Christmas Day, and you were right about several things. I have been too involved in your family's business, and I haven't been respectful of your boundaries. Amanda tilted her head slightly, suspicion flickering in her eyes, but she gave me a measured nod. I appreciate you saying that, Margaret. I want to make amends, I continued softly, and I'd like to do something that will secure your family's future without requiring me to be so involved day to day. I slid a folder across the table, meticulously prepared by Detective Reeves' team. I'm planning to gift Brian and the kids $200,000, I said, but I want to do it in a way that minimizes taxes. Amanda's expression betrayed her excitement for just a split second before she composed herself. That's very generous, she said smoothly. There are just some formalities, I added. Since not all of it will go into your joint accounts, I'll need details for every account you use, including any personal ones you manage household expenses with. This was the moment of truth. If Amanda was honest, she'd insist Brian be part of this discussion. If she was conning us, she'd try to keep control. I can get you everything you need, she said quickly. Brian's too busy with work, and honestly, I handle all our finances anyway. It'll be easier if we work directly together. Perfect. Great. I'll need account numbers, routing info, and balance verification for tax purposes, I said, calmly taking notes as Reeves had instructed. Over the next 20 minutes, Amanda spilled everything. Details on their joint accounts, plus 3 extra accounts I'd never heard of. She even mentioned investment portfolios and a business account for a consulting company I didn't know existed. What she didn't realize was that every word was being recorded. Detective Reeves was at a table across the cafe, listening in real time. There's just one more thing, I said casually. The transfer needs to happen quickly to meet a tax deadline. Can you have everything ready in the next few days? Absolutely, Amanda said with a polished smile. Margaret, I think we really got off on the wrong foot at Christmas. This is exactly the kind of fresh start our family needs. I smiled politely, then walked to my car, heart pounding. My phone rang almost immediately. Mrs. Foster, Detective Reeves said, we've got everything we need. 3 of those accounts are under false identities, and 1 has been funneling money directly from your son's salary. We'll be making arrests tomorrow morning. The next day, my phone rang again. Brian, voice shaking. Mom, Amanda's been arrested. They say she's wanted for fraud in 3 states. They're saying she's not even who we thought she was. That afternoon, I sat in my quiet apartment, a steaming mug of tea in one hand, and my apple crisp, finally served warm, on the table in front of me. The house was silent, but it felt peaceful, not lonely. Amanda was in custody, facing charges that would keep her away from any family she might try to exploit for a long, long time. Brian was heartbroken, but finally seeing the truth. The kids were safe, slowly beginning to understand that their grandmother had protected them from something much bigger than they could grasp. And me? I had my dignity back. I wasn't a victim anymore. At 67, I'd learned a hard but powerful truth. It's never too late to stand up for yourself. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't punishment. It's refusing to ever be anyone's victim again. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.